Hello! So, in this series of videos, I'm going to talk a bit about all of the starships that appear throughout the Star Wars films, in chronological order. And before I get started with this, I want to point out that the canonicity of some of this information can be called into question ever since Disney essentially rebooted the expanded universe. However, a lot of the details I'm going to look at don't really affect the events or narrative of the films, so it's all good. And besides, a lot of this stuff is making its way back into canon now anyway. Oh, and I'm using the special edition versions of the original trilogy, the merits of which are a discussion for another time, /podcast /video. The reason I'm using them is simple. There's more ships than that, so without further ado, number 1. The first ship to appear in A New Hope in any Star Wars films ever, as we all know, is a CR-90 Corvette known as the TANTIVE 4. The name TANTIVE is pronounced as such as it's based on the word TANTIVE, which means to ride at full gallop or swift or rapid, in this case fleeing at full speed from the Empire. CR-90 Corvettes were manufactured by the Corellian Engineering Corporation, one of the 3 largest starship manufacturers in the galaxy and widely considered the most prolific. The CEC is also responsible for a few other ships on this list, Corellia of course being the home planet of everyone's favourite smuggler. There's a hint. Although designed primarily as consular ships intended for diplomatic missions, many of these vessels were reappropriated by both the Rebel Alliance and the Galactic Empire for use in combat skirmishes during the Galactic Civil War. The TANTIVE itself has quite a bit of history. During its time in service of House Organa, the ship was a central player in the events following the end of the Clone Wars. Its final mission was instrumental in securing the schematics of the Death Star from Scarif, and soon thereafter it was captured, boarded, and destroyed by Imperial forces. So, some concept information. Now, it's not my aim to focus too much on the behind the scenes information in these videos, but some of the developments in how these ships came to be is quite interesting, so I'll just drop a few things here and there if I think it's worth it. Starting with this, the CR-90 was the original design for the Millennium Falcon. After a lot of conceptual development and many iterations of the blockade runner model, it was ultimately changed to the saucer shape that we now all know and love, leaving the Space 1999-esque design of the CR-90 here to become the rebel ship that opens the film. And my favourite aspect of the design of the TANTIVE 4 is definitely the horizontal hammerhead-like cockpit. There's just something cool about that. And Rogue One opened last week, and there's some great new shots of this ship at the end of that film, so. Number 2. Okay, so literally following the TANTIVE 4, we have the first appearance of an Imperial First Class Star Destroyer, namely the Devastator. In the aftermath of the Clone Wars, these ships quickly became a symbol of the Imperial Navy's power when they were used to devastate any opposition to the newly formed Galactic Empire. And later on, during the time period of this film, their role became hunting down high-value rebel targets and bases. When we first see the Devastator here, it is Darth Vader's flagship, until he later transfers to his newly constructed Super Star Destroyer, the Executor. Constructed by Kuat Drive Yards, the largest military shipbuilding corporation in the galaxy, the Devastator was 1,600 meters in length and had roughly 46,000 crew on board, around 9,000 officers, 27,000 enlisted personnel and almost 10,000 stormtroopers, as well as a vast belly of hangars that contained numerous starfighters and ground assault vehicles. 72 TIE fighters, 8 Lambda-class shuttles, 20 AT-AT walkers, 30 AT-ST or AT-DP walkers, and 15 Imperial troop transports. And the fast deployment of any of this infantry had earned the Devastator and the other Imperial First Class Star Destroyers a reputation as one of the most resource-intensive ships in the entire Imperial Navy. Before I move on, throughout the video I'll be giving some brief shoutouts to different types of repulsorcraft that appear throughout the film. While they aren't spacefaring ships, they do fly, or at least hover, and are frankly quite cool, so I'll be giving them a brief nod, starting with the Escape Pod. Although equipped with hyperdrives in some cases, they were designed primarily to fly into the upper atmosphere of nearby planets to await pickup. Number 3. cool addition to this short scene is the inclusion of the Sentinel-Class landing craft. It's a multi-purpose transport with that trihedral foil design that the Empire seem to like so much. Although I can see why, it is very cool. Considered an elegant departure from previous Imperial engineering, these shuttles were sometimes used by high-ranking Imperial officers and dignitaries, but were more commonly found transporting stormtroopers or cargo. Designed by CNF Fleet Systems to resemble its counterpart, the Lambda-class T-4A, the Sentinel-class was more spacious, able to carry 75 troopers at a time, 55 more than the Lambda. A few more honourable mentions before I move on: the INCOM T-16 Skyhopper, the X-34 Landspeeder, and of course, the Death Star. Though technically in space and equipped with a hyperdrive, I'm going to class it as a space station and not a starship, so... Number 4. So this is the first shot we see of a TIE-lined starfighter in the film. These ships were the Empire's signature starfighter throughout its entire political existence, and were instantly recognisable across the galaxy due to their distinctive look and sound. They have quite a complex history of development, as they're ultimately the end product of having adopted characteristics and design features of several different starfighters used in the Galactic Republic during the Clone Wars. Once again developed by CNF Fleet Systems, based on assets acquired from Kuat drive yards, some of the basis for the modern version of the TIE Fighter can be traced back to the Alpha 3 Nimbus or V-Wing starfighter. Not unlike this predecessor, the TIE Fighters in A New Hope had 2 large vertical wings that were used to collect solar energy and were extremely agile and manoeuvrable at the expense of possessing any heavy weaponry or reliable life support. They also lacked a hyperdrive or even basic combat shielding. The TIE's other features, the cockpit pod, the twin ion engines, and the weapons technology, were instead adopted from the ETA-2 Actis-class interceptor, which was used by many of the Jedi during the Clone Wars. Now, stepping out of the universe briefly, as a fan, details like this are always interesting to me, as clearly everything I just said is the opposite way around in reality, meaning all the previous in-universe versions of the TIE Fighter are actually based on the original design and characteristics of this initial TIE Fighter version in A New Hope. And it's often the case that the previous iterations tend to be much more complex in their design. To explain this visual contradiction away, I like to think that the uniformity and absolute efficiency of the Empire meant these kinds of starfighters were streamlined into something much more suitable for mass production and disposal. Oh, and quickly, my favourite part of the TIE is the beautiful sound design, that distinctive screeching flight sound which was created by combining and blending an elephant call with the recording of a car driving on a wet road. So cool. Okay, back to it. Number 5. The large ship seen in the background here is a GR-45 medium transport ship. Whilst very similar in design to the transport vessels used by the Rebel Alliance during this time period, this is actually the smaller, more compact, civilian version of the same line, often used by smugglers due to the low cost and large cargo space. Number 6. In the skies of Mos Eisley here, we have a YT-2400 light freighter. Now, before the Disney reboot, this ship was actually the Outrider, a heavily modified freighter that belonged to a Corellian smuggler called Dash Rendar. He and the ship were instrumental in many of the events that took place, or used to take place, between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So maybe, just maybe, the story of this ship will make its return in some form one day. Who knows? However, in the new canon, this ship is currently just a random YT-2400 light freighter going about its business. Developed once again by the CEC, it bore the trademarked saucer shape of the YT series. The ship was known for the high modification potential of its stock frame, as well as being very fast and very tough, with over a dozen weapon emplacement points. For these reasons, it was favoured by mercenaries and smugglers alike, who were often in need of a well-armed transportation that could also be devoted to ferrying nefarious cargo. Oh, and it's also favoured by me. I love the YT-2400 design. Okay, honourable mention time. A quick look at a swoop bike here, very fast, very dangerous. Quickly followed by a brief look at a V-35 Courier, a popular land speeder found on many planets in the Outer Rim. This large upended ship here is known as the Dowager Queen, Jadawaga Kuikuni, a colony ship that crashed hundreds of years prior, becoming a well-known landmark in Mos Eisley, as well as a spiffy upmarket hotel in the old expanded universe. And a very brief look at an A1 Deluxe floater here, before I move on to number 7. Okay, the ship that needs no introduction, a YT-1300F light freighter, the Millennium Falcon. Designated serial number YT492727ZED, it's the ship that made the Kessel run in 14 parsecs.
12!
Despite its aged look and resemblance to countless other YT series freighters in the galaxy, the Millennium Falcon possessed many modifications that set it apart from its counterparts. Before our boy Han Solo was captain, the ship had had many previous owners, all of which had either upgraded or downgraded pretty much every system according to their personal needs. This resulted in the Starship becoming incredibly unique and an extremely far cry from its off-the-dock specification. Primary mods included increased power to its speed, weapons and shields, as well as its hyperdrive, which was one of the fastest in the entire galaxy. This was due to the stock drive having been replaced by an SSP-05 Class 1 drive. This had initially doubled the size of the ship's main engine, which had then been further jury-rigged into a Class 0.5 drive. The Millennium Falcon would go on to play a pivotal role in many of the turning points during the Galactic Civil War. It was involved most notably in the destruction of both of the Empire's super weapons, the Death Star and the Death Star 2. Not bad for a ship designed primarily to push freight or embark on supply runs for small businesses. Not bad at all. Because of its look and class, the ship would later go on to spend many years sat obsolete at Nima Outpost on the junkyard planet of Jakku, until once again becoming thrust into events that would come to shape the future of the galaxy. The First Order's Starkiller base superweapon being the latest victim to fall, due in part to the influence and involvement of the Millennium Falcon and its crew. Number 8. One of the most versatile starfighters that existed during this time period was the INCOM T-65B X-Wing starfighter. Manufactured by INCOM Corporation, the ship was renowned for its speed and maneuverability and was synonymous with the Rebel Alliance and their efforts to restore the Republic. The ship's distinguishing feature was its distinctive S-foil wing design at the rear of the main fuselage. The 4 S-foils, or strike foils, were movable wings that were locked into closed position during standard flight but separated out into attack position via a servo actuator when the fighter became engaged in combat. The result of this new formation gave the fighter a distinctive X shape when viewed from the front or rear, earning it the X-Wing moniker. This effectively changed the functionality of the ship, as the laser cannons mounted at the end of each wing attained an increased field of range when the S-foils were extended. Prior to the T-65 model, INCOM had previously manufactured several starfighters such as the ARC 170 with the S-foils mechanism, chiefly to assist heat dispersion, as the proximity of engines and weapon systems to the narrow wiring found inside the thin wings could often cause overheating issues. The Rebels had adopted the T-65B due to its excellent all-round capabilities and its suitability for a variety of different mission profile types. The robust starfighter supported a lot of advanced technology, including shields, heavy weaponry, and was even equipped with the Class 1 hyperdrive unit. This made the starfighter vastly superior to its Empire counterpart, the TIE fighter, in almost every way. The TIE advantage came in the form of superior agility and maneuverability, and often sheer numbers in the form of TIE swarms. X-Wings were also equipped with a topside socket able to house an astromech droid co-pilot. This addition gave the pilot an advantage as they were able to rely on the droid to control aspects of the flight and the power systems, as well as calculate hyperspace jumps and perform repairs to the ship whilst in flight. Number 9. The next starfighter we get a look at inside the Rebel base here is a BTL-A4 Y-Wing Assault Starfighter. This ship was adopted by the Rebel Alliance for its capacity to carry lots of heavy armament and its bombing abilities. Early versions of the Y-Wing were used by the Grand Army of the Republic during the Clone Wars and were involved in several notable skirmishes. Unlike the later designs, many of these were designed for 2 crew and contained a bubble turret which swiveled 360 degrees, allowing the gunner a full view of the surrounding space. The Starfighter was developed by Koensei Manufacturing, which lost the contract to provide the Empire with these kinds of ships after the Star Destroyer fleets began the complete policing of star systems. Because of this, much of Koensei's stock, including many Y-Wings, were to be destroyed or scrapped for parts. This provided the opportunity for Rebel cells to raid salvage yards, such as Reclam Station on Yama, to steal squadrons of Y-Wing bombers for their own cause. The squadron we see making the attack run on the Death Star in this film came directly from Reclam Station. Y-Wings would continue to be used in Rebel operations for many years, being present during the Battle of Endor as part of the attack run that entered the Death Star's framework to seek out and destroy the central reactor. They were also involved in the Battle of Jakku, the Empire's last stand, and the final large-scale battle of the Galactic Civil War. Number 10. The last unique starfighter to make an appearance in A New Hope is a TIE Advanced X-1, a Scion Fleet Systems prototype starfighter initially designed to become the replacement for the standard TIE line fighter. While this transition never came to pass, many of its features and advancements were later incorporated into other TIE models such as the TIE Bomber and the TIE Interceptor. This version of the TIE Advanced was an updated model of a previous starfighter of the same name, the TIE Advanced version 1, a ship that utilised the S-foil mechanism in order to conserve hangar space. It's worth mentioning that both of these ships have similar cosmetic features to a few ships I mentioned previously, notably the ETA-2 Actis-class Interceptor. This is likely due to Anakin Skywalker's experience piloting one of these during the Clone Wars. And that's exactly what makes the advanced prototype we see here in this film so unique. It's tested and piloted by Darth Vader himself. It was encountered by the Rebels a few years prior to this assault on the Death Star, when the Sith Lord, without the aid of any backup, had used the TIE Advance to perform a daring and deadly attack on a Rebel fleet. Vader had surprised the fleet with his skills and even managed to take out a flagship, a Pelter-class frigate called Phoenix Home, before the Rebels fled into hyperspace. The most visible difference between the TIE Advanced and its counterparts was the developed wing shape. This bent wing shape gave the solar arrays the advantage of an increased surface area, which allowed for more power whilst reducing the overall size of the craft. Other improvements included a reinforced Durasteel alloy hull, a shield generator, additional armaments, and the inclusion of a Class 4 hyperdrive. In summation, the TIE Advanced X-1 was less like an ordinary TIE fighter and actually much closer to an X-Wing starfighter in terms of its features and capabilities, making the showdown between father and son at the end of the film here all the more fitting and appropriate, as they are much more similar than they realise. So there you have it, every starship seen on screen in Star Wars A New Hope. I realise there are a few exceptions, such as all these distant vessels in the background skies of Mos Eisley here. Whether they're starships or repulsorcraft of some kind, I'm unfortunately not able to make any of them out, so if anyone knows or I got anything wrong on anything else I covered, I'm happy to be corrected. I hope this was fun and or educational for you, and I realise this is just a film and many of these details don't matter, but whatever, they're fun and I enjoy the details. I like how established the Star Wars universe can be at times, so I'm off to make more videos about it. Thank you for watching, have a great day, peace!